The Legend of Zelda franchise plays host to dozens of unique fantasy races, from the Gorons of Death Mountain to the Zoras of Zora's Domain. None of them are as mysterious as the elusive Kokiri of the Forbidden Forest of Hyrule. They are eternally youthful, they disappear if you get too far away and reappear if you get closer to them. Fairies of the forest are drawn to them as companions. They cannot leave the forest without dying, and they are children of an ancient spirit. There are so many things and more that we don't know about the Kokiri. Now I'm going to give you all the information you need about them before the Ocarina of Time Remake comes out and probably disproves all of this. So let's get started with the dramatic history of the Kokiri. Millennia before the events of Ocarina of Time, Hylians lived skyward. After the events of Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, there was an era of chaos followed by an era of prosperity, in which the Kingdom of Hyrule was first established. We don't know exactly when, but according to the Legend of Zelda Encyclopedia, when the Hylians on the surface began to build cities and structures of stone, defying the natural way, a group of them left their peers to form a new tribe. These Hylians were the progenitors of the Kokiri. They wanted to live their lives a more natural way, living in harmony with the environment that surrounded them. At some point, these proto-Kokiri settled in what would become the Kokiri Forest bordering the Lost Woods. It's really at this point where we lose track of these proto-Kokiri, as after thousands of years they became the eternally youthful Kokiri accompanied by their fairy companions that we know today. This next part is going to be speculation to determine just how the proto-Kokiri became what they are, so just enjoy the ramblings of a madman. During the events of Skyward Sword, at no point in time do we ever hear about a great Deku Tree of any kind. But this was also a very young and dangerous Hyrule. Benevolent spirits were not as powerful at the time. What I like to think happened is that the proto-Kokiri traveled deep into the Lost Woods without realizing the fate of all those who travel in the woods without fairy companions. That the children become Skull Kids and the adults become Stalfos. Despite this, the proto-Kokiri found themselves in the favor of a newer, younger forest spirit named the Great Deku Tree. He must have been very pleased to meet the Hylians who sought for peaceful coexistence with the nature around them. Knowing the fate of those who wander in the Lost Woods, the Deku Tree must have sent the first fairies to become the proto-Kokiri's companions, allowing them to live near the Lost Woods without risk to their lives. Upon discovering their new spirit savior, the proto-Kokiri would have created their permanent settlement in the forest around the Great Deku Tree. As the Kokiri and the forest around them grew, so too would the Deku Tree's own power grow in potency and reach. His power would grow to mix with the life force of the Hylians in the forest, granting them eternal youth and protecting them from the monsters that roamed across Hyrule and through the forest. Eventually, the proto-Kokiri would notice that none of them were aging at all. With each new generation of the now Kokiri being born, they became less and less Hylian, appearing younger and younger until they resembled Hylian children. The life force of the Kokiri and the Great Deku Tree became so intertwined that rather than reproduce, the new Kokiri were merely spawned by the Great Deku Tree himself. Over the years, leaving the forest at all became taboo, as those who left it would age and die. Eventually, all who were left in the forest were the Kokiri we would meet in the era of the Hero of Time. So what exactly is a Kokiri as we know them in Ocarina of Time? Well, essentially they are what they appear to be, eternally youthful Hylian children who do not leave the boundaries of the forest they reside in. A true Kokiri is any one of them who has been joined by a fairy companion to accompany them throughout their lives. They are also known as children of the Great Deku Tree. One of them even refers to him as the father of all of them. In an interview on November 26, 1997 with Shigeru Miyamoto, he was asked, "Does Link's family appear in the game?" Miyamoto, Link is a child of a race of elves called Kokiri, or, because it's Japanese, Kokiri. For some reason or another, there are no parents in this race, only many children of the same age. All of a sudden, they grow up until they reach a certain age when they disappear. The next generation is born just as abruptly, so at some point, Link will disappear. Take this quote with a grain of salt, because this was before the game was even released, so what Miyamoto was allowed to say and what he did say was essentially avoiding spoilers while being vague, because obviously we know that Link is not a child of a race of elves called the Kokiri. He is actually a Hylian that was raised among them, so he's not going to disappear when he grows up. Although he does actually disappear, so He was right about that. Anyways, if the Kokiri leaves the forest, they will die eventually. But what we do know about that is that it's usually of old age or possibly a monster of some kind. The reason this is because the Great Deku Tree's power extends over all the Kokiri and keeps them living, and it also keeps them safe. Due to the protection of the Great Deku Tree, the Kokiri were able to form their own society and culture. They have a social hierarchy like that of children on a school playground. The meanest kid around, Mido, bullies other Kokiri into doing menial tasks for him. He also seems to have a vested interest in Saria, though whether that is romantic or not is unclear, as the Kokiri don't appear to have any romantic relationships among them. More than likely, he just wants the favor of Saria for being the most talented and naturally beloved member of the entire tribe. The life of a Kokiri is one of relative peace and ease. Their fairy companions help them navigate the dangerous lost woods and keep them safe from the curses and monsters therein. Gathering resources like rupees left by Hyrule's Kokiri population seems to be the foundation of their entire economy. Despite the protection provided by the Great Deku Tree, at times it is apparent that the Kokiri have chosen to defend themselves from monsters. Within the Kokiri forest, a chest containing their only metal weapon can be found, the apparently legendary Kokiri sword. At least, Mido was amazed that Link found it and is using it. It could be a relic from their past before they split off from the rest of the Hylians, only to be used in times of danger for the Kokiri, but that's speculation at best. They also fashion protective shields from the bark of the Deku Tree, etched with their emblem, which resembles the Kokiri Emerald held by the Deku Tree. More on the Kokiri Emerald will be discussed in another video. Likely, these shields are used to protect them from the Deku Babas and Deku Scrubs as they travel through the Lost Woods. They also use slingshots and Deku Nuts as projectile weapons to defeat any enemies they might come across in the Lost Woods. The Deku Nut itself is an ingenious weapon for a peaceful and diminutive race like the Kokiri. It may not do any damage, but it would allow them to flee if a situation becomes too dangerous. And lastly, the Kokiri fashion Deku Sticks from the Deku Tree, which act as a one-use melee weapon that can kill most enemies in the Lost Woods with a single blow. We aren't entirely sure what the Kokiri subsist on for food, but given that Link's own home is fitted with farming tools and can easily sustain an entire cow, they don't seem to have any issues with farming their own food or raising livestock. Given that Link himself, who was raised by the Kokiri, doesn't protest any culinary mysteries like cow's milk or various potions, we can at least assume that the Kokiri are not inherently vegan. Another odd thing about the Kokiri is their relationship with the other creatures in the Lost Woods. Deku Scrubs will attack them, but when some of them are bested in combat like the business Scrubs, they will actually sell useful items to them. This doesn't appear to be exclusive to the Kokiri, as even when Link is an adult, they don't hesitate to do business with him. Despite this, there is an open hostility on all non-business Deku Scrubs towards the Kokiri. When the protection of the Deku Tree fades, the Scrubs invade their forest home and attack any and all beings they consider to be enemies. By this we also know that the power of the Deku Tree affects the Scrubs as well. Then we have the Skull Kids. They will attack an adult, clearly Hylian Link, without hesitation. But around the Kokiri they are completely docile and just want to play music with them, and will even barter and trade with them, such as when one will buy the Skull Mask from Child Link during the Happy Mask questline. There's only a few important Kokiri characters. Only some of them are actually named, in fact. Saria, Link's best friend and a talented musician. She seeks solitude in the grove by the forest temple. She also composed Saria's song. If we dive a little deeper into her character, we also learn that she's incredibly brave. One of the know-it-all brothers, when Link returns to Kokiri Forest, tells Link an evil wind is blowing from the direction of the forest temple. Saria left, saying, "I have to do something about it." In that way, she is the only Kokiri that is worthy to become the sage of the forest when she is awakened. We also have Mido, the self-proclaimed boss of the Kokiri and a childhood bully of Link's, but it seems that he's not just a bully of Link's, it seems that he kind of bullies everyone in the village and nobody really seems to like him. He seeks for both approval of the Great Deku Tree and Saria, but what he really deserves is a quick punt to the other world. There are no other notable Kokiri in this game. There's the Know-It-All brothers, there's Fado, most of the other Kokiri are completely unnamed. We also do have another Kokiri in the Wind Waker named Fado. He is the Wind Waker Sage of Winds, claims to have known the Hero of Time, but he seemed a little bit mischievous in nature, so who knows if that's true or not. But I do hold the personal belief that the Kokiri in Ocarina of Time are not all of the Kokiri in the entire forest. I think that would be a little bit ridiculous to assume. Overall, the life of a Kokiri is one of peace and tranquility, living at one with the nature that surrounds them, though they are not strangers to self-defense in times of dire need, and will even take up the Kokiri sword and shield to defend their beautiful home. Now on to the history of the Kokiri that we are actually 100% certain happens, because we do witness the events of it in the game itself. The Kokiri during the events of Ocarina of Time are one of many races who are devastated by Ganondorf's evil plans. At the beginning of the story, the Kokiri are simply living peacefully in communion with the forest around them under the watchful eye of the Great Deku Tree and their fairy companions. Everything changed when Ganondorf sent Goma to infect the Deku Tree. Though Link is able to destroy Goma and retrieve the Kokiri Emerald, the damage the forest spirit received was fatal and it dies in front of Link. The effects of his death are not immediately apparent, though the Kokiri are devastated by the loss of their guardian spirit and parent. When Link returns after 7 years, the effects are much more potent. Though the magic of the Deku Tree that kept the Kokiri from aging still appears to be intact, meanies, as they're called by the Kokiri, infect their forest home in massive size and number. Link, unrecognized by the Kokiri, comes to town and learns from the residents that Saria has taken off to the forest temple to stop the monster inside. He proves to Mido that he is Saria's friend by playing her classic song and proceeding through the Lost Woods. Upon destroying the evil within the forest temple, Saria is awakened as a sage of forest, and the Deku Tree sprout grows in front of the original Great Deku Tree, and peace returns to the forest. The Kokiri are relieved to see their home is free of monsters once more, and often reminisce about their old friend Link, who left them years ago. When Ganondorf is finally defeated, the Kokiri now enjoy the ability to leave the forest they have been confined to for generations. In a 1999 interview with Kawagoe, one of the developers of Ocarina of Time, he was asked, "The Kokiri tribe is outside the forest at the ending, and the Zoras too?" This is because Link's success has wiped out the evil forces, and the range of the Deku Tree sprout, protecting the forest, has been expanded. The Zoras do not need to be immersed in water all the time, obviously. But that's all we know of in the game itself. It's very little information to go on, but that is the history of the entire Kokiri people, as we know it in Ocarina of Time. As we know, there's also a future to the generation of the Kokiri, and what happens to them? Eventually the Kokiri, when new dangers impact Hyrule, are transformed into the Koroks by the Deku Tree sprout, now known as the Great Deku Tree. As he said, once upon a time, long ago, the Koroks took on human forms. But when they came to live on the sea, they took these shapes. And in Breath of the Wild, they are still around in the same form even though the Great Sea is gone. But there is something else odd that we seem to learn about the Koroks. Doesn't seem that Hylians or Hyruleans in general notice them at all. Who knows why Link does? Maybe it's because he's got the blood of the hero in them. He's very close to the Kokiri in general. But as he is the reincarnated spirit of the hero of time, it would make sense that he can actually see his kin, essentially. But I'm not going to go into the Koroks in this video. We will go over that in another video. But for now, that is literally everything that we know about the Kokiri and what they are, where they came from, and what they do, and everything. And now that we've reached the end of the video, I just want to do a quick disclosure about where I'm getting my sources. Most of this was found on page 50 of the Legend of Zelda Encyclopedia, among other places in the same encyclopedia. Now, the encyclopedia itself, I think, is a valuable resource for anyone who wants to know more about the Legend of Zelda franchise. However, you should know that the way that it was written was essentially by fans, and it was then authorized and published by Nintendo. The fact of the matter, it actually contradicts a lot of material from the games itself. So in this video specifically, I only use things from the encyclopedia that were not contradicted in-game. That's kind of how I've decided to factor in how canon the encyclopedia is. A lot of it is accurate, and I do like a lot of what they have to say, but there's a lot of it that, again, contradicts what's in the games itself, so there's no reason to really take it for what it says. But yeah, so that's all I really have to say about the Kokiri and where they came from. That's all we really know. I scoured the internet for interviews and yeah, everything.